Hello, I'm Mrs. Laura Ellis, and welcome to my session, True Confessions of an Anne Arundel County Election Judge. This session has three main points. Number one, to understand the importance of voting rights in the United States. Number two, to understand how young people played an important role in securing the right to vote, and specifically the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And number three, to encourage everyone to vote and at least consider serving as an election judge for a minimum of one election. Seeing elections from behind the scenes is so eye-opening, and it gives everyone confidence in understanding and knowing how our elections truly work. I decided to become an election judge because I saw an advertisement in the newspaper. It wasn't something that I had planned, but please know I've always thought voting is important to my family, and I have been voting since I was 18. I've never missed an election, and I've served as an election judge in Anne Arundel County since 2014. Voting is important to me because as an African American, that right was denied to me and my family historically. Thankfully, by the time I came around, and because of these protesters that you see right here in this picture, I've always had the right to vote. And one of the things that I want to point out to you is that these are young people in Selma, Alabama. And that's also why I'm so passionate about voting, because I got to meet some of these young people years later when I worked for Selma City Public Schools. And they told me their stories and their experiences, and I was greatly thankful to them and inspired. So, this is a picture of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And many of the people who were involved in the civil rights struggle and specifically voting rights crossed this bridge. Many of them were members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, also known as SNCC. These were young college students who came to Alabama to help African American residents of the state register to vote, which was very dangerous for African Americans. They could lose their job, they could be harassed, their houses could be burned. It was dangerous. I mean, a person could be killed just because they wanted to vote. One of the people I worked with in my school was a woman who was a member of SNCC, and she helped register African Americans to vote. And she was part of the protests that happened later in 1965. As were her two younger sisters, one that was 11 and one I worked with at the Voting Rights Museum, Joanne Bland, was only 7 in 1965. The bridge you see in this picture, Edmund Pettus Bridge, has become a symbol of Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act, but ironically, it is named after a Confederate officer, and you can see the protesters here at the bridge. The goal of the marchers was to march non-violently from Selma, where they were denied to vote, to Montgomery, the state capital. And you can see here the boy from Troy, Mr. John Lewis, who was the chairman of SNCC in 1965, and later became a long-running successful congressman from the state of Georgia. Sadly, John Lewis died last year, and the person who called him the boy from Troy was Dr. Martin Luther King. I emphasize that because John Lewis started his activism as a very young person, and I want to encourage everyone who's young, if there's something you want to do, don't be discouraged. You can do it. Let's take a closer look at this picture. You can see Mr. Lewis and the other protesters, and maybe the police think John has a gun or something in his hands, but they're non-violent, they're unarmed. In the center of the picture, we have spectators and the press. This man looks like he's taking pictures. And we also have the police officers. Let's take a look at the police. They have bully clubs, they're armed with firearms, they have on face masks, and they have on helmets. They look like they are prepared for a conflict. Does this look equally matched to you at all? Can you imagine how the protesters must have felt when they saw the police, and look at the gestures of the police officers, the pointing fingers. It doesn't look like it's going to be a good interaction. And unfortunately, it wasn't. This day, March 7th, 1965, became known as Bloody Sunday. And you can see here, John Lewis is down at the bottom. He's being hit with a bully club, and he actually had a very serious head injury. Joanne Bland, who was 7 at the time, shared with me that as they were marching and singing, the people at the front of the march crossed over the bridge, and they couldn't see them anymore. Then all of a sudden, everything stopped. There was total silence, and then they heard pop, 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 and there was more silence, and then screaming and horses, and it just became totally chaotic. The pop, 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 pop was the tear gas, and people were hurt, including her sister, who was 11 and got hit with a bully club across the head, and she bled, and she had to be taken to the hospital, the Good Samaritan Hospital, which was a segregated hospital in Selma at the time. So it was very terrifying. Unfortunately, many people were hurt, but fortunately, it was something that was broadcast all over the country and all over the world. And people were shocked that the police would attack people who were just exercising their right to protest. And we had the right to vote. We were just denied it, or at least those in Selma at the time. And the Black church served the civil rights movement very well because the marchers met at Brown's Chapel before the march. And when Dr. King joined them later that month, there was a second march. The police were there, as you can see in this picture, so Dr. King decided not to proceed because he didn't want anyone else to get hurt. Then there was a third march, and that march was successful. They were able to march from Selma to Montgomery through Lowndes County, and people from all over the country, from all different backgrounds, joined them, and they were protected by the National Guard. Unfortunately, there were still people who were hurt and killed, and so we will always want to remember the sacrifices of those who fought for the civil rights of all. And their actions resulted in the passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, signed by President Johnson. In the year 2000, I was able to attend the 35th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. Here we see John Lewis as a congressman, President Clinton, and Jesse Jackson, longtime civil rights activist and former presidential candidate himself. It was a wonderful celebration. In 2015, the city of Selma celebrated the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. And you can see John Lewis here again, President Obama, the Obama family, and to the right of President Obama are a number of civil rights activists who were there as children in 1965. So I wanted to provide some of the history of Voting Rights Act and how important it is for everyone to vote. So I want to make sure that when you become eligible to vote, that you register to vote and that you vote in every election, because every election is important and every vote counts. Now, to become an Anne Arundel County election judge, you simply have to fill out an application, and if you are selected, which I believe you will be, you have to go to the Board of Elections, I have it pictured here, for your training. And in 2020, the training was a little different due to COVID-19. Once you go to your training, you will receive this manual. And the training is about 4 to 8 hours, depending on your position. And believe it or not, all you have to do is be a resident of Anne Arundel County or wherever county you live and be 17 years old. Due to COVID-19, some of the refresher classes were held on Zoom because so many people are needed for being election judges that they start doing the training about 4 to 6 months ahead of time. Also, due to COVID, we lost a number of our election judges because most election judges are senior citizens and those who are retired. Because during the week or so before the final election day, there's early voting, and many people, like me, are at school or work. So, due to COVID-19, there was somewhat of a concern that we would have enough election judges and a number of smaller polling places. A polling place is where an election takes place, were closed, and bigger polling places were open. So for example, my polling place where I usually serve is an elementary school. So this time around, or in 2000, I had to serve at a middle school because it had more space for social distancing. So there were a lot of challenges with the 2020 election. As you can see here, the manual to become an election judge is 14 chapters. So it's a lot of information. And once you go through your training, you're assigned your polling location, your time, and all the other rules about being an election judge. And you're also given a election judge's workbook. And if you're successful as an election judge through one election, you can also apply to be a chief judge, which means you would be over that particular polling place. So because of COVID-19, as I have mentioned, there were special rules that did not exist in previous elections. So these were the rules that we had to learn and maintain due to COVID-19. Also, did you know that absentee ballots have been a part of the election process since before the Civil War? That's true, but it was most commonly and first used widely during the Civil War because President Lincoln wanted to make sure all those gentlemen who were on the battlefield had the opportunity to vote. So absentee ballots is nothing new, and it wasn't something special for 2020 election. What was different is due to COVID, at least here in the state of Maryland, our ballots were mailed to us. Under normal circumstances, if you know you're not going to be home or in your state or county during an election, you would request an absentee ballot. Sometimes people refer to absentee ballots as mail-in ballots. So you have to fill it out, follow all the directions, and stick it in the mail. But due to issues and challenges of the post office this year, the state of Maryland and many states decided to create official ballot drop boxes. This one was at the Board of Elections, but they had them at high schools and middle schools. And you can see me here with my ballot, and I'm casting my vote. Also, as students in middle school and high school, you can vote for your member on the Board of Education for your school system. Ironically, there are some parents here in the state of Maryland that are not very happy how the student member of the board has voted. So they have decided to go to have a lawsuit to strip those students in districts that allow their student members to vote to prevent any and all students boards of education to vote. So I was very surprised by that. And I don't think it's right. I think if you all vote for your student member of your Board of Education, that person should have a voice. And I think if you're concerned about that, you should contact your student representative on your Board of Education, and please contact your board members. In fact, anytime you don't like something or you have a concern, you can feel free to contact your representatives. Most of them, you can just Google them and they have an email, and you just let them know how you feel, or you can pick up the phone and call them. So always know that you have a right to share your opinion with elected officials, even if you're not old enough to vote yet, because every voice counts. One of the things I wanted to also share with you all is that there are a number of civil rights and voting rights centers all over the country. This one is in Lowndes County. And Alabama, due to its history, has something called the Civil Rights Trail. And there's a triangle. There's Selma to Montgomery, then Montgomery to Birmingham. And there's so many other sites that you can visit. So if you're looking for a place to visit in the summer, or to visit those places where history took place, I definitely recommend this site in Lowndes County, Alabama. It is excellent. So, my last thoughts with you today are please vote. When you are old enough to vote, please do so. If you can vote for your student member of your Board of Education, please do so. Every vote counts. And please don't miss elections. And please encourage others to vote. And think about serving as an election judge. And my final word to you is please make sure we protect the right to vote wherever we are, because every citizen has the right to vote. And I leave you with this. You see this sign, "We March with Selma." That's because after what happened on March 7th, 1965, people who couldn't get to Selma started protesting all over the country because they did not think that was right. So please, always remember our right to vote is sacred, and it's important that we all have the right to do it. Thank you very much. And don't forget, please vote.